Now we're finally getting deep into Spooktober season, and by getting deep into Spooktober season, I mean it's nearly over since the past few videos took a while to get done. Anyway, so what's on the menu for today? I'm a massive fan of handhelds, which means of course I have to do something for handhelds this year. I want to do a video on Halloween handheld games this year. While I was searching out for these, I honestly couldn't find a lot of amazing or interesting original games. It was actually really tricky to find games for this video. This video only had 2 rules though. It needs to be on Game Boy, Game Boy Color, or Game Boy Advance. I know the video is called Handheld and isn't really specific to just Game Boy, but honestly if I expanded the console limit beyond that, I feel like I would have had too much to cover. Maybe I'll revisit this topic again next Spooktober, since I'm sure there's plenty of other candidates on other consoles. Anyway, time to stop with long exposition and hop into the main meat of this video. First up is 1D Every Which Way, a licensed game based off of the character Wendy the Good Little Witch from the Casper franchise. This was going to tie into a planned animated series that ended up falling apart, but thankfully we still got the game released in 2001. If you take a look at who developed it, it's certainly promising to say the least. WayForward, who you likely know from the Shantae franchise, developed this game, and that's honestly really exciting to hear. I love WayForward. How's 1D Every Which Way? This game is rad. Okay, getting the obvious out of the way. Yes, they released a Game Boy Color game in 2001. It's a WayForward tradition to release some of the best games in the Game Boy Color after it's dead. To compensate for this, 1D Every Which Way includes exclusive levels for the Game Boy Advance. Honestly, the game doesn't even need to compensate for anything though, because it's a great game. For a Game Boy Color game, everything here looks fantastic. The colors here pop to an insane degree, and stop me if I've said this before in multiple videos, but bright colors are like the holy grail of pixel art for me, and just art in general. I am a sucker for color. A game is nothing if only the graphics are good, so how does it play? 1D Every Which Way is a 2D platformer, which is incredibly common on the Game Boy Color, but unlike its contemporaries, 1D Every Which Way has a mechanic where you can flip gravity. Press up and jump to flip gravity, or flip gravity down by pressing down and jump. This mechanic takes the game from being just an average, but pretty platformer, to being a blast. You're constantly flipping the gravity to get around the levels. Speaking of the levels, how are they? They're pretty cool, but not really filled with anything memorable, and they blend together. That isn't the worst thing in the world. It just means the game has solid design but lacks set pieces that build wow factor. The game is short and sweet at least, with 4 worlds. Each world ends with a side-scrolling shooter segment, and these are okay, but probably the weakest part of the game for me. I didn't mind them though. Being the weakest part of a great game isn't really that much of a problem. It just means it isn't as great as the rest of this great game. Overall, 1D Every Which Way is outstanding and easily one of the gems that shines the brightest in the Game Boy Color's library. For me, the Game Boy Color's library isn't like this big library with a lot of games that stand out and hold up nowadays. 1D Every Which Way is an exception here. It's a licensed game that is more than just a good licensed game. It's a good video game overall too. Unique gimmick and solid level design makes 1D Every Which Way an easy recommendation from me. In fact, one of the reasons I made this video was so I could talk about it. But I'm sure some of you knew about it already, so let's move on to the next game. Next up is Resident Evil Gaiden on the Game Boy Color. Or at least it originally was going to be the next game, and I wanted to spend a lot of time in this video talking about it, but it's just super lame. I ended up not having a great time with it. Going into it, my expectations were already in the basement, because while Resident Evil is a great franchise, Gaiden is a game I often hear be considered one of the worst, and it never looked that fun to play. When I booted it up, I was ready for something that might be clunky, but I might be able to laugh at it or even scrape some fun out of it. So, how is Resident Evil Gaiden? Overall, Resident Evil Gaiden left me with a feeling of pain and disappointment. The moon is clunk central, which I expected, but expecting something to be bad doesn't really help make it better. It's like if you know you're gonna get punched, and when you get punched, you're like, oh yeah, it still sucked, but at least I was ready for it. The punch analogy is accurate, because it's like, wow, nothing about this game is good, it kind of is just overall bad. And it's like, yeah, it kind of causes only pain. Movement is just such a chore, and I feel like your character should be a little bit faster. The combat is the most interesting part of this game. Capcom tried to pull off this system where you walk into zombies and it goes into a battle system that has you time your shots to kill them. It's okay, but at this point, why not just make a regular top-down shooter for the Game Boy Color? Yes, I know, it probably wouldn't feel as much like a Resident Evil game, but Gaiden is already weird, so why not just at least make it fun? Just because it's interesting doesn't mean it's fun. Resident Evil Gaiden just feels, smells, and tastes like a missed opportunity. Since Gaiden was such a massive disappointment, I decided to take a look at the cancelled Resident Evil 1 Game Boy Color port for my fix of Resident Evil for this video. It's pretty much everything you'd expect. Resident Evil 1 in Game Boy Color is slow, boring, and clunky, which is a word that I keep using a lot in this video, but that's really just the best way to describe it. Because it tries to be faithful to the original game on PS1, it is fascinating to play. I really wish we got this instead of Gaiden. The team behind this port tried their hardest to make this playable, but there wasn't much they could do to make a faithful Resident Evil 1 port in the Game Boy Color. And that kind of is really fun, at least. It's fun to look at and say, yeah, they really did try to bring Resident Evil 1 to the Game Boy Color. What if Resident Evil 1 Game Boy Color wasn't dumb enough for you? Well, how about a tech demo of Resident Evil 2 on the Game Boy Advance? You just can't have too much Resident Evil weirdness in the Game Boy family, I guess.